Fraud never sleeps. That's what my cue card says here. How do you stay vigilant? And what are the top scams to be aware of? We've got a fraud expert from Interac here, and it all starts right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Let's get started. Who are you and what do you do?
Hi, Doug. My name is Rachel Jolicoeur, and I'm the Director of Cyber Market Intelligence and Financial Crimes at Interac Corp.
Cyber Market Intelligence. That sounds pretty cool. So we're going to hit a lot of cyber stuff today. Now, you were on the podcast 2 years ago in 2021. I thought it was last year, but I have no sense of time given the events of the last 3 years. And we talked about Interac e-transfer fraud. I'll put a link in the show notes on YouTube so people can go back and watch that. We've asked you back because, fraud is an all the time thing, but if I'm not mistaken, March is Fraud Prevention Month. So there's kind of a specific focus on it this month. So this is not a March topic. This is a whole year topic, but this is kind of the excuse we've got to talk to you today. So I have a list in front of me of 5 scams, and I think you could probably give me 30 of them, but this is a half-hour show. So we're gonna go one by one, and I'm going to mention the scam, and I want you to explain it to me. And for our listeners, when I mention the scam, let's see if you already know what I'm talking about, or if this is something that is like, oh, I hadn't heard of that one. So the first one I have on my list here is the renter scam. So what are we talking about with a renter scam?
So that type of scam is looking after the opportunity with the scarcity of housing market, affordable housing. And it's going out, putting an ad, trying to incite some appetite from renters to be able to, look for housing. And then, so these people who are looking at finding a suitable apartment, they might reach out to them, and the person who is pertaining to be the homeowner or the building management is going to say, well, you know what, there's a high demand. I want to make sure that you're serious about this. Send me a deposit and I'll hold it for you, and then you can come and schedule a visit later on. So this is pretty simple. Right. So then you think, great, I'm going to secure my spot to go and visit the apartment. You send possibly $500. And when you show up, the apartment's not for rent, or they don't know anything about it, and then you lost your money. So that's one version of it. There's also another one that kind of came up recently, and it's an email, usually an email or a text, and it says, we've changed the way that we're accepting funds now. So some cases, some people might still pay their rent with check. And they're saying, or even if it's e-transfer, they'll say, instead of sending the money to this email address, here's another email address since we've changed management company. And then, so the tenants are sending their monthly rent to someone else. And then all of a sudden you get the landlord saying, you haven't paid rent in a couple of days, or you're behind for a week. And that's where it kind of unfolds. And then the person's out of the money, unfortunately.
Now, I want to end the show by going through practical tips, but why don't we just go right to that right now with this specific renter scam that you're talking about? How am I supposed to protect myself from that?
Well, this one is kind of a general tip that I'll give for any time that you're sending money to someone that you have a previous relationship with, is if it comes out of nowhere, such as they change property management, I changed my email address, then I would recommend find a way to get in touch with them. So usually for your landlord, you'd have a phone number. So I'd say you either text them or you phone them and you say, I've just received an email from you saying that things have changed. Can you confirm that? And in some cases, they may say, yeah, sorry, I should have given you a heads up. But also it's an opportunity for them to say, I've never done that. I've never sent you an email. So no, don't send the money to these individuals. Yeah. That would be the general rule for most scams where you have a relationship with the individual.
Yeah, get in touch with them. And I guess if I've always communicated with my landlord by telephone or he lives upstairs from me and he always comes down and says hello. And now he's sending me an email or a text or a telegram or whatever, I guess. Then that's kind of weird. Why is something changed? So I guess whenever something changes, that's what kind of puts you on alert. So, and you're right. It's hard to find a place to live now. The real estate market's kind of gone crazy. The price of houses has gone down, but that's pushed people to sell their house to start renting, which makes the rental market more cumbersome. And as a result, ripe for scams, obviously. So it's particularly that, send me a $500 deposit and I'll let you see the place. Well, how about I bring a check with me when I look at it, then would probably be a safer thing. So, okay. So I was not aware of either one of those scams that were happening. So I'm glad you've brought me up to speed on that. Now, something near and dear to my heart, the next one I've got on my list here is loan scams. And I think specifically we're talking about online lending. And so we just released our Joe Detter, Hoyes Michaelis bankruptcy report a couple of weeks ago. And we mentioned in that report how rapid loans have become so popular. We used to call them payday loans, but now we call them rapid loans because it covers a much wider swath. And a lot of those are online. So tell me what I should be watching out for when it comes to loans and online lending in general.
Those ones, there's a few flags for them. So normally it would be fine. The interest rate is pretty good. I think that's one of the flags maybe. If you're having a difficult time getting a loan through normal channels, which is the financial institutions, usually those other loan vendors might have a higher interest rate. And in the ones with the scam, they seem to promise a good rate compared to their competitors. So that might be a red flag, but it's not the end all be all. What you have to look out for is they're going to get you to fill out paperwork, but then they're going to start charging you for administration fees, legal fees, and it never ends. And that's where, you have to ask yourself, at what point do I start to really question that it doesn't make sense? And not only are those online loans, some of them, the ones that obviously are scams, is that they try to get your money, but when you fill out the forms, they also get your personal information, because most likely you're going to provide them with your banking information. You're going to give them maybe your SIN number, your address, date of birth, and now they're armed with all this information to create even more havoc with what they have.
Yeah, because if I know your birth date, your social insurance number, your address, your name, I'm you.
Right.
I'm you. I can apply for stuff. I can do all sorts of stuff. So, okay, don't be sending money to get a loan. A loan is the opposite. A loan is where they give you money, not the other way around. But also be very careful with giving personal information to anyone you don't know. I mean and so these loan scams are not just about getting the $50 administration fee. In fact, that's probably incidental to it. The whole point of the scam is to get your personal information, and then they can rock and roll from there. So okay, that's also kind of scary.
And they can be very lucrative, because if you do need a loan, in some cases it's for an emergency, is that they will string you along. So I've heard cases where they've applied for a $20,000 loan, but because of all the fees and they just strung them along, they ended up giving away $5,000 to get a $20,000 fee or a $20,000 loan. And then in the end, they didn't get the loan, and they were out the $5,000 and out of their personal information that they shared. So my recommendation is also do extensive research to make sure that you know which loan company you're dealing with.
Yeah, and if it's an online company and you don't know where their address is, or they're not even in Canada, then probably that's not somebody you want to be sending $5,000 to get a $20,000 loan. Now, the third one on my list here has to do with employment and jobs and everything. So we talked about the rental market, which is challenged. Well, getting a job has always been a challenge. It's very hard to get the perfect job you want. So what kind of scams do you see that relate to employment and jobs and that whole world?
This one's a bit like the rentals scam because it works both ways, right? Like so the employment scam, you can have it where the scam is the employer, which is usually a criminal that's posing to be a reputable company, is reaching out and saying, we have the perfect job for you. Usually the pay is amazing. You don't have to come in the office. The hours are fantastic. And they could either create a fictitious company, or they could just leverage the good reputation of an existing company. And then they'll do an interview, they will get all the information, and then they'll the job might be that you act as a recipient of funds. So basically you're becoming a money mule for the criminals, or it could be a different job. So that one, that not only same as the investment and the loan scam, but they get your personal information, but they also get you to work for them unbeknownst to you, right? So you're kind of becoming an accomplice. Now, that's where the employer is the criminal. And then we could turn it around because of the job market being so competitive. We know that there are individuals who are actually being employed to do interviews and pass the interview process on behalf of someone else.
Wow.
And then I know. So when you're hiring this person that you interviewed, the credentials is really good, and you think you got that perfect employee, especially in scenarios during the pandemic where everyone was working remotely. So then all of a sudden you hire this person, and then they're working, you try to connect with them online. Often they say their camera's not working, which, I mean, we've all been through it, on a call, camera's not working and some stuff. And then they go on for a couple of weeks only to eventually find out the person that you interviewed is not the person that is working for you. And it could be that they just weren't able to get a job on their own through the interview process, but also it means that you hired someone that you have no idea about, and you might have given them access to company logins and information about the company. So they could have applied for the job with this sole purpose of stealing, confidential information from the organization.
Well, this is interesting because on the surface of it, it appears that the scam is, I'm not really good at doing interviews, so I hire someone else to do the interview. Exactly like I'm going to hire someone to take the test at school. University, there's 300 kids taking the test. Well, who knows who's in there and whatever. Here, take my ID, go pass the test. Same kind of thing. Go pass the interview for me. So it would appear that the scam is, I'm getting a job that I'm not really qualified for. But really, again, the scam comes down to data and information. Because once the fake person ends up getting into the company, well, yeah, the first thing you do when you're onboarding the employee, well, here's the password to your email, here's the password to this, here's the password to that. And even just having access to the company email. Like when I send an email to you, it comes from, me at hoys.com. That's our company name. So that gives it some credibility right away. And if it's a big company that's got, like you say, a name that everyone would recognize, there's probably all sorts of nefarious stuff I can do, even just with access to that email. So it's very interesting how the scam might be even different than what you think the scam is. So, and like you say, this works both ways. So as an employer, I guess I really have to check out the person I'm hiring here.
Right.
Can you, and I don't know how you do that. Like, what do you do? Send me a copy of your photo ID so I can match it up to the person I see on the screen? Like, what are you supposed to do in a virtual world? I don't know. Do you got any ideas on what I should be doing as an employer?
I think that's the challenging one. Meeting them as in person is good, obviously. And then even as they onboard, so, usually the first few weeks, months of an employee starting, it is good to have, just a red flag. If the camera isn't working all the time, once in a while, we understand. If it's always excuses not to be on camera, that should be a red flag. And then performance is also an indicator. You've hired this individual, they seem to be very qualified, and then all of a sudden the quality of the work is poor, or they can't do the work. And I think those are flags that you can't disregard.
Which I guess is why when employees are hired, they're on probation, so they've got to kind of prove themselves. I'm much more concerned, obviously, about the other side of it, which is I am the employee trying to get the job, and I think I'm applying to this big company, and in fact, it's something totally different. And I guess, again, I'm thinking through how to commit this fraud here. I know you're not here to give me advice on how to commit fraud, but I guess what they're doing is creating a separate website, which isn't hard to do. Anybody can spin up a website. You get the domain name that it looks like it's ABC company, but it's really ABCDEF. It's not .com, it's .some other weird thing or something. So I guess as an employee looking for a job, again, you got to, does this pass the smell test? What do I know about this company? Can I contact them on LinkedIn as well? What else do they have? And make sure I'm not getting totally caught in this. Now, you mentioned kind of the other side of the loan scams is investment scams. So that one seems more straightforward to me because I get those emails all the time. You know, hi, I'm in some foreign country and I've just inherited all this money and I need to convert it to Canadian dollars. Is that the kind of investment scams you're talking about, or are there other ones that we should be aware of?
An investment scam is a very broad term. There's different variation, but there is one, especially when cryptocurrency was gaining more popularity amongst the general public, and then the cost was rising of it as well as, the output. So you would normally get this unsolicited advice through email, social media, and it's like it could look like it's coming from friends or family, or just a reputable source, and reach out and go, you know what, Doug, I've been investing in cryptocurrency. My returns have been amazing. I suggest you do that. You know what, I got a guy. And then you're like, oh, okay. And if it's just unsolicited from someone that you don't know, they're not as successful. But what we've seen is often they will take over an email account address from someone that you do know. So they'll infiltrate their address book. And then, so they might pretend they're Rachel reaching out to Doug, and you're like, well, Rachel knows her stuff. So you know what? I'll take her advice. I'll send her a few $1,000s. And then the funds are gone, right? Or they'll pretend that you have a high return of interest, try to get you to invest more. And again, those you'll never get the payback on that. And we've seen it work from family members to they might also hack into an account of, influencers who all of a sudden there's one influencer who was doing hair products and different hairstyle. And all of a sudden her account started giving advice on investment. And those followers, some of them did say, well, if she's, putting advice out there, then maybe I should go and send money to those individuals. And sure enough, it was a scam. So I talked about crypto. It could be precious metals. It could be anything. They are offering a high return on the investment, which is your red flag, because if you look at all the other investments, you're not going to make that much money. So that should be kind of an indication that it's a scam.
I could use some hair advice actually, but I guess if it's only crypto, then I'm not so interested. Okay. So I've got a scam here that I want to pull. You tell me if I'm going to be successful at this or not. So what I've done is I'm going to create a newsletter, an investment newsletter, Doug's investment newsletter. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a bunch of stocks or cryptos or whatever. I guess it would work for anything. And I'm going to pick 10 different stocks, and I'm going to have 10 different email addresses or email mailing lists. And I'll send out the tip. Here's a free tip to you. This stock, boom, 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 goes to 10 different people. Now, of course, probably half the stocks are going to go down. Well, I'll just forget about those. But then next month, for the 5 stocks that did go up, I'm going to send another email out saying, hey, look at last month, that one went up. And people go, yeah, I did get that email. They did go up. And so here's another recommendation. Now, probably only one or two of those are going to go up, but I've now got a list of people who I've sent 2 good recommendations to. That's a pretty good one, eh? Now, I don't know anything about stocks or anything, and I don't know how I'm going to turn that into money, but I guess that kind of hits your button about unsolicited, or if it's coming from an apparent influencer, then that's really the thing that raises the red flag then, right? That it's an influencer, but perhaps in a different venue, the hair products as opposed to the investments. I guess if Warren Buffett starts sending me email, I don't know why he's sending me emails, but maybe that has more credibility. So do you want to subscribe to my newsletter, Rachel, or you're gonna
sure, send it over.
You send it over. Send it over.
But you nailed it right there. If Warren Buffett all of a sudden starts emailing you, Doug, personally, and you don't have a relationship with this person, to me, my spidey senses are tingling.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess to make that scam more credible, it shouldn't be Warren Buffett. It should be somebody who's got a little bit of credibility, but not quite that fancy. So I don't know who that would be, but the local person or something. But yeah, again, and if I'm getting an email, this kind of comes back to your first point. Okay, so Warren Buffett just sent me an email. Great. Why don't I give him a call and thank him for sending me the email? Let's see if I can get through to him or not. And if I can't, then it probably is not a legit thing. Now, it's the month of March, which means obviously it's Fraud Awareness Month, but it's also got to get your taxes filed month.
Yes.
Which leads to our favorite institution, CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency. And I'm always getting emails. Your account this, please click here, please click there, please click whatever. CRA scams are very common. Are you still seeing them? And if so, what are we supposed to do about them?
I think we're always going to see them. I mean, this one is easy. If you think about, if you want to target an audience where you're going to get a very, you're going to reach everyone, most likely because they have to pay taxes. This is the one to go with, right? Because you could pretend to be, I don't know, an internet provider, but the odds of you hitting that, all the same customers of that internet provider, it reduces your chance of being successful. We know with the CRA, most people, if not all, have to pay taxes every year or have to file their taxes anyways. So then why not pick something that will touch upon the entire Canadian population? So I think that's why the CRA is popular. Also, it's scheduled. It's every March. So they're going to send emails. Criminals are going to send emails pertaining to be the CRA. And this is really interesting because it goes back to most tips that I give when you receive an email from a company that you do have a relationship with and you do, business with, is that don't trust the link that they give you. Go back to the source. So if you're logging in, you get an email pertaining to be your financial institution and there was a transaction, click here to respond yes or no. Go back, do your online banking using the website that is at the back of your banking card. The same thing with the CRA. They have a very secure portal. If they send you a note, you should just go back to that portal. Don't click on the link they give you. Just go back to the original portal and put in your information. So what we're going to see and what we've seen in the past is that the CRA has issued you a refund. Click here to accept it via Interac e-transfer. Often for me, I've received them and I still haven't, and I didn't file my taxes. That kind of comes up as, interesting that they're giving me a refund and I'm not getting, and I haven't filed yet. So, the promise of free money is where people kind of fall victim to. So anytime that they get kind of a link, an email, we know that the CRA communicates in a way that it reroutes you to their portal. And I think that's the general tip. Just always go back to the original source of the organization that you're dealing with.
Well, which leads us perfectly into the practical tips section then. So there's number one, don't trust the link. Go to the original source. And you're right, with a legitimate CRA email, and I get them all the time because, you filed your taxes, you got your notice of assessment, whatever. They never put a link in there. There is no link in a legit email. So, okay, I go to the portal and I log in that way. So all they're doing is telling me that something is there. Go to the original thing. Same with your bank. Your bank is, I assume, and you're with Interac, so you're tied in with all the banks. I'm pretty sure they're not sending out, here's a link to click. So practical advice number 1, don't trust the link. Practical advice number 2, you've already given us, which is get in touch. So if someone sent you an email with a link, well, pick up the phone and call them just to make sure that's the actual link. Now, I got a question. Again, this is in the practical advice section, and you're with Interac, so you're the one who knows the answer to this question. Auto deposit. So if my grandmother is going to send me some money over Interac, she can, put it in her computer and I get an email that says, hey, you got this money. I can also go into my Interac or in my bank, I guess, in my online banking, and I can click a button to say, I will accept any money anybody sends to me. That's what auto deposit is, I think. And you're going to correct me if I'm wrong. So is that something I should click? Or,
absolutely.
Okay, why? Why is that? Because if there's all these scammers out there pretending to send fake money, why do I want to be getting all that money from them?
Well, there's convenience, which is the first one. So you don't have to go in and then answer the security question, which often it's like, what's the security question? Oh, is it with a capital? What? And then you have from a safety point of view, is that when you register for auto deposit, the bank pre-authenticates you, and then you connect that with a handle. So if it's attached to an email address, which you would attach it to an email address or a phone number, then anyone who sends you money, when they're about to send you the funds, they will most likely have a pop-up screen that will say, Rachel, you're about to send money to Doug. He's registered for auto deposit, and you won't have to put a security question and answer. So it also tells you that it's going to Doug. Now, if it's someone who says that they are Doug, but when it gets registered and you look and the name doesn't match, it could be an indicator that you're not sending it to the right person. So that's a good way. Also, by removing the security question and answer, is that it prevents you from losing the funds in the event that your email got compromised, because we know that there's a notification that is being sent by email or text. If anyone has access to your email account, they could, in theory, receive the funds if they have the answer to the security question. Now, I'll tell you, most people that I've asked what their security answer was, or the security question was, is that what's the color of the sky? What are the color of my eyes? What is the name of my dog? And we know that on social media, we like to post photos and stories about our kids, our pets, lots of photos of us showing what color our eyes are. And really most banks give you 3 attempts to answer the question. So registering for auto deposit, convenient. And from a fraud perspective, it gets you to not only know who you're sending money to, but also it protects you from any account compromise.
So to you, that's a no-brainer. Everyone should set up auto deposit.
Absolutely. If the financial institution offers auto deposit, I would say absolutely.
And I assume
take advantage of it.
Like all of the big 5 banks offer it, I would assume, right?
Yes.
And so
that's correct.
There may be some smaller institutions that don't, but okay. So there you go. So that makes sense to me. And it's easier for me as the recipient, but it's also easier for the person who's sending it, and it's more secure. So kind of why wouldn't you do it? So, okay, cool. So final comments then. What other practical tips do you want to give people other than what we've talked about? Don't trust the link, get in touch specifically, signing up for auto deposit. What other ways are there that we can, prevent fraud and stop being scammed?
Well, I'd say anytime there's a call for urgency, this is where criminals kind of get you, right? We're busy. We've moved to digital for most of our interactions. Life is hectic. And then all of a sudden you receive a text or an email and it's like urgent. Your package has been stuck at the border and they think it's drugs. So click this link and you need to whenever there's kind of that sense of urgency, there's a large purchase made on your card, did you do that? Click the link here. That should be like really your red flag. This is where you kind of stop for a minute and we say, stop, scrutinize, and speak up. So just take a moment to pause. There's, clicking on the link right away is probably the first thing you're going to do wrong. But if you just take a moment, then you probably can identify very quickly half of those attempts that are coming your way. But I would say if you did click on the link and you provided information, then I wouldn't panic either. There are ways to report it. So you could go to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center. You can contact your local law enforcement, report it right away. They'll give you tips on what else to do following up. But, don't just let it be and then don't talk to anyone about it because, we talk about victim shaming and there's nothing shameful about saying, hey, I had a moment where I was vulnerable. I gave some info, but I don't want this to happen to anyone else. And this is where it's kind of an extension a little bit of make sure that you reach out to those people that to confirm if they sent you a link or money. Also check in on them, right? Hey, this is what happened to me, or I've been hearing about this latest scam. Have you heard about it? Actually, someone just reached out to me and they said that, they saw me online and they were really interested in me. And that's like another topic of discussion, Doug. Like we could talk about the romance scam and, these criminals are working every angle. So, I would say just take a moment, pause, validate the source of the information and just report it. Are
there any resources you would like me to put in the show notes you want to give people right now? You mentioned the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center. Is there anything else, any other resources you would like people to be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. We have some tips on our website at interac.ca under fraud prevention. There's a list of all the latest scams as well, and we continually update that as new scams come up. I mean, this is like a full-time job. There's always new ways that these criminals are thinking about on how to defraud Canadians, but I would say visit those two sites, and I want to thank you for all this time.
Well, thank you very much, and I will put links in the show notes on YouTube to everything we've talked about. Rachel, thanks very much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And I think that was some fantastic advice. I will just reiterate the 3 S's: stop, scrutinize, and speak up, because a lot of these scams have the same the similarity in a lot of them is there's upfront fees. You got to pay for this before you get that. So, okay, if anytime someone's asking you for money, that should certainly raise the red flag. So again, stop, scrutinize, speak up. And that's why you said, well, if someone's contacting you, get in touch. Don't trust the link. That's what stop, scrutinize, and speak up means. Excellent. Rachel, thanks very much. That is our show for today. There will be links, as I said, on YouTube to what we've talked about and to the previous podcast I did with Rachel a couple of years ago. So a lot of great information there. Again, it's the month of March. It's not just the only month we think about fraud, though. Whole bunch of stuff there. If you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. The audio podcast as well comes out every Saturday morning, so please subscribe to that. Thank you all very much for listening and watching. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.